Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Stories of Creative Courage. And I'm here today with Tom Parson, who is a Manchester based, UK based entrepreneur. I want to introduce Tom in a moment and tell you all about the wonderful things that he's up to creatively. But before we dive into that, what I'd love to do is to say a little bit about why we're here. Stories of Creative Courage and why I wanted to start this series of conversations. To me, in the work that I do, in my own creative work and the work that I do to support other creatives, I see a lot of fear that gets in the way. And, amazing things can happen on the other side of that fear. And it's not to say that the fear diminishes, but that I think we can really support each other and lift each other up by admitting the fear, being very honest about it, and also really sharing our experiences about how we got through that fear, what we did to step up, and what the result was, what the transformation was. So it feels to me really important to have these dialogues around courage in this sphere of creativity. All of the guests that I invite on this series really are coming at creativity and perhaps even at courage in very different ways. So, as I say, I'm here with Tom Parson, who is based in Manchester, UK. How are you tonight, Tom? It's evening in the UK.
Very warm, but good
Very warm.
otherwise.
It's very sultry. It's one of the hottest days of the year here, I think, isn't it, already? And so, yeah,
Yeah.
we're both trying to say how, oh gosh, of all the days of the year, we've chosen the hottest one to have this conversation. Um, so yeah, let's dive in. I'm very happy to have you here, Tom, on this in this conversation. It's you and I have known each other for a year and a half, something like that.
Yeah, something
Um,
like that, yeah.
yeah, and met by chance at a networking event, and I think we both kind of homed in on each other's sort of interests, and there was a vibe there right from the beginning, even though we're doing different things. But that kind of we need to have a coffee together, don't we? And it's just unfolded from there. So Tom Parson is a tech entrepreneur, creative tech entrepreneur. I think that word is really key. And also an innovation consultant, which I just love that job title and really want to find out more about that through the course of this conversation. But Tom's also a musician and a composer. And Tom, you have composed your own music and streamed it to various platforms as well. And if that's not enough, you're also an educator, right? So you teach people coding and you teach people entrepreneurship as well, entrepreneur skills, and also music production skills. So all of that is such a rich melding of wonderful modes of creativity. And as I put in my kind of promotion post for this conversation, I think it really lends such an interesting way of thinking about innovation in all the ways, like in the technical sphere, in the musical sphere, in the educational sphere. So I'll shut up waffling. And I guess I just want to dive into the first question, which is always a general one about creativity and how creative expression shows up for you in your life and your work as well.
Yeah, thanks. I love talking about creativity. I think it's something that because people have all kinds of preconceptions, I think, when you talk about creativity. A lot of people think about like artistic ability and art and things like that. Um, but to me, like, creativity shows up in my life sometimes in sort of more stereotypically creative ways like that. Like if I'm drawing or making music or things like that, or like what you might say, like being creative. Um, but it also shows up for me like when I'm like cooking and decide like, we get a veg box in our household. And so we get this like myriad selection of veg like every 2 weeks. And we need to be creative to come up with how to use all of that and not let any of it spoil and use it in nice ways that we're going to enjoy eating. I think it's creative like when I get up in the morning and I'm deciding what to wear for the day and like putting together like an outfit. I think it's creative if like my train's cancelled and I need to come up with some new route home that I've not done before. And so I think like creativity shows up in so many different ways and people really overlook a lot of the ways that they are already creative in life. Just kind of cultivating a life for yourself with all the kind of daily decisions that you make is being creative, in my eyes.
Mm,
It's just
yeah.
about responding to what's around you in kind of new ways that feel authentic to you,
Yeah, I love that. I mean, what I love about that is it makes it so much more manageable and accessible, right? Rather than like having some kind of lofty creative practice. And that's great. I mean, creativity can show up in that way too, but just the simple, everyday things like choosing what to wear, like choosing what to cook. I love the example you give about having a veg box and having to kind of be creative with what's there because to me, it speaks to one of the most important things that I think creativity lends us, which is, like constraint in
Hmm.
creativity kind of forces us to think differently and to see the connections between things or to kind of produce different kinds of creations in whatever way. So I think I love that example. And yeah, it's interesting that the more conversations I have with people about creativity, the more this theme keeps coming up around the everyday versus the kind of artistic practice that, we might have been forced into doing at school and then, we're told we weren't very good at. And so it kind of democratizes creativity. It makes it more equal, accessible for everybody.
Definitely.
Um, so I love it. So, you are someone who has, you're talking about the everyday, and I agree that's really important. But you have lots of different practices, I think. So I just want to dig in a bit to like, first of all, to the tech entrepreneur aspect of your work, because that is a field that perhaps many people would not think was very creative. And, many of the people who maybe are showing up here, and, welcome to everyone who's joining us. I'm here with Tom Parson today, and we're talking about creativity. As a tech entrepreneur, like how does creativity show up in that field for you?
Yeah, that's such a great question, especially talking about all of my sort of different interests and stuff, because that all kind of stems from this curiosity that I have. And I feel like from a young age, I've always been quite a curious person. I'm just interested in people and problems and technology and ideas. And I just like learning and I like finding out about things. And that was really a driver for me learning how to code when I was at school. So when I was like 14 or 15, I remember going to a friend's house and they had this software to make websites. It was called Microsoft Front Page. And they made this little website with Microsoft Front Page, and I thought that was the coolest thing. And I went home and went to do it on our family computer and discovered that we did not have that software for whatever reason. So rather than giving up, I remember looking at like, well, how do you make websites without this software? And I started learning about HTML and web design and coding. I learned about it from a book, would you believe? So I had a physical book where I was like looking and writing code examples and things like that, which seems crazy now. Um, but that was really creative to me, and it was a really exciting time of the internet because I'm 35, so this was probably like 2003, 2004 or something. So I feel like I was sort of coming of age as the internet was kind of coming of age, and people were like using it more and more, and it was becoming more widespread. And so it was a really exciting time on the internet where there was no advertising, there was no social media at that point. It was all just like people making stuff and putting it on their little homepage and saying like, look at this weird little cool thing I made. Welcome to my homepage, things like that. Um, and so it was kind of a hotbed of like creative expression, and it's not in the way of like artistic again or like drawing or anything like that. It was just like making stuff with code and putting it online. Um, so that was kind of a little goal, like a great opportunity for me as someone who considered myself quite creative and quite curious. Um, and yeah, I started to. I didn't really plan to start making money from it or make a career out of it, but I basically had a friend, and I'll always credit this friend Sarah at school, whose mum ran a charity, and her mum was like, "Oh, we need a website," and Sarah was just like, "Tom can make you a website. Tom can do all that stuff," and I was like, "Sarah, I can't do that." But yeah, I did, and I got paid like £200 to make this website, which probably took me hundreds of hours in hindsight. But I was like 15 and loved that I got £200 to do something that I would have done for free. Um, and yeah, that was kind of the beginning of that. And I just started like freelancing, doing more projects, and eventually went on to start a business.
I love that. There's so much about that that stands out to me, and so I'll maybe touch on those and then come to a question. So the first thing is curiosity, and that keeps cropping up again and again in all these conversations. That kind of what happens if, what would happen if, or how could I create a website without the software, and what happens if I learn code? And curiosity, I think, is really key. And the other is like the way you've described, like the birth of the internet. Like, part of me is thinking, oh yeah, if only social media was like that. And then I thought, actually, Substack is at the moment. There's no adverts; it's just people showing up, saying, here's the
Mm,
thing I made, and here's the weird and wonderful thing. And, actually, for now anyway, at least, there is this kind of sense of like, oh, that's how it used to be in the early 2000s, and so it's, yeah, I just think that's really cool that the emphasis is on the creation of the thing rather
mm,
than the how we make the thing or the platform in a sense. I think that's
mm.
really important. Great. Yeah. So I love that you're making money out of tech entrepreneurship at 15. Amazing. Where are you now with all of that? Like, how does creativity show up for you now? And how do you support others? Because I know that you're also like supporting and teaching other people how to be creative in this tech space. So how does that all work now?
Yeah, that's a big question. So, um, if I sort of pick up that thread again, so I was freelancing when I was like at school and at uni and stuff, and then I got a job. I got a job where I was employed as a web developer, and then I started this business when I was like 24, 25. Um, by that point, I feel like my relationship with coding had changed a little bit. So when I was learning it, it was just this fun thing I was learning for fun, and I wasn't asking to be paid for it until that opportunity came along. And then as soon as I started to get paid for it, and eventually when I became full time employed and business owner, it really changed my relationship with that creativity that was involved in that. Because as soon as I was doing it to pay my bills and to make a living and to put food on the table, um, then yeah, it just changed. It wasn't something that I didn't feel as kind of uninhibitedly creative. I didn't feel like I could be as authentically creative, because I felt like I was sort of being creative within the bounds of like what was expected of me with a client, for example, or within my team. Um,
Mm.
and my role actually within the business changed a lot over the business ran for 10 years, and wrapped up recently, and we'd love to talk about that. Um, my role over the 10 years changed a lot because I had a co-founder, and my co-founder was also a coder and a web developer. And a couple of years into the business, we decided to really focus our roles. So, because it didn't make sense for us to kind of both be doing all the same stuff. So, I took on more of a sort of like business development, sales, marketing, client facing, client care, stuff like that. So I wasn't actually doing as much coding. So not only was like the coding I was doing, my relationship sort of changed with it, but also I wasn't really doing it anymore. So by the end of the 10 years of the business, I felt like I was able to be creative, but in very different ways. I was more kind of like coming up with ideas with clients, and then I would kind of write the brief for other people to be creative off the back of that, and then they would kind of take that and run with it and actually make the thing. And there was some pride in that, in on my part, because it felt great to have a team of people. I really, like I say, I really like teaching. I like empowering people. I like supporting people. So it felt really good to have that team and have them go on to achieve and kind of deliver something. Um, but something was lost for me there. Something was lost where actually I missed in a very sort of, I think artists are all a bit kind of egotistical, but I think like in a very kind of self-centered way, I was sort of, I wanted the pat on the back, and I wanted the kind of like the recognition, and I wanted the sort of to feel like I was authentically delivering something from me and that being recognized.
I love that. I mean, I love how you're describing the evolution of your creativity, that, you're sort of moving on from coding then into kind of more, client facing and
Mm,
empowering and facilitating other people's ideas and skills and all of that. And then a shift into authenticity as well. Um, so here's where, Tom, I want to bring in your music because I know that
yeah,
you're a musician. And
perfect.
I think that was the very first conversation we had, actually. It was not so much like, oh, here's my business and here's what I'm doing. It's like, oh, I write music and I play music. And um,
Mhm.
so to speak to like evolution and to speak to authenticity, like how has your music evolved and how have you now found ways to integrate it in an authentic way into your life and work at the moment?
Yeah, that's a great segue, because I was literally thinking that's a great thing to bring up next, because I do feel like my sort of reconnection with my music was a response to this, everything that's happening with the business. So I first started playing music when I was at school, again, kind of around the similar time as coding, probably a bit before actually. I had like lessons at school in guitar and stuff and piano lessons, things like that. Um, and I wrote some extremely cringy, like singer-songwriter songs, some with friends and stuff, which was really fun. Um, but then when I went to uni and in my kind of working life in my 20s, I sort of lost touch with that. I'd sometimes pick up the guitar and like strum a little bit and stuff, but it was very intermittent, and it was almost in a kind of wistful, nostalgic way. It wasn't really in a sort of engaging way. It was just kind of, oh, I remember when I really played guitar. Um, But then I think when I was in the thick of all the stuff with the business, maybe like 7 years in or something, I definitely think I reconnected with my musical self in response to that, in response to the fact that like I was feeling like I needed some kind of creative outlet. I was feeling like I wanted. It was almost a bit of a kind of knee-jerk response to that, or sort of like
Mm.
a response of like, well, if I'm not getting it from this anymore, I'm going to go and find something else. You know, screw you guys. I'm going to go and be creative somewhere else, kind of thing. Um, and an opportunity came along because I'd always wanted to get into electronic music production. I always thought that was dead cool. I really liked a lot of electronic music, but I hadn't really properly got into it before. I found this YouTube channel basically that I really fell in love with. Watched all the videos on this YouTube channel. This one guy who teaches this particular software that I liked. And then I bought his online courses, and it basically kind of snowballed. And while he takes the online course, gets access to this Discord community. You spoke about Substack being like a bit kind of reminiscent of early 2000s internet culture. And I think the same is true of Discord at the moment, where Discord again isn't like there's no ads. It's all very community focused. It's a lot of the servers are like invite only, so you get to curate a real community of like-minded people. Not, I actually don't really like the term like-minded people because I think we should surround ourselves with people who have different opinions from us and will challenge us. But yeah, that kind of space, you know, people who all have shared goals. Um, Anyway, got access to this difficult also. And one day, the guy who runs this YouTube channel was just like announced that he was putting on an in-person sort of academy retreat thing in his hometown in North Carolina. And so I was like thinking about it for weeks. You know, I was just like, I wonder if I could do this. And it's so interesting, like why I was considering that so much and why I was kind of mulling over it, and it kind of wouldn't go away. I was just like, but it was more in a sense of like, what if I was the kind of person who went on this thing? It wasn't like, should I go or shouldn't I go? It was more thinking like, can I go? Like, is that who I am? Am I like allowed to go and do that? Like, I'm not like a proper musician. Like, I just kind of mess around and I'm doing these courses and stuff. But I kind of got over that, and my partner Dan really encouraged me to just be like, "Do it! You should do it. Why wouldn't you do it? This is an incredible opportunity." You know, so I kind of got over myself a little bit and just did it and like booked onto it. And then, long story short, came to the retreat, found myself in the States, met a load of incredible people who also could sort of pass new online through this Discord. Stayed in an Airbnb with a few of them. One of them Hunter is here now. Great, thanks for turning up. Um, well, basically, it was just this incredibly validating experience where I was in a room with like maybe, I don't know, 50, 60 other musicians, and there were kind of seminars and workshops, and but more importantly, there was kind of peer support and peer contributions, and people were like asking my opinion of their music and stuff, which was like, oh my God, they think I'm a real musician who like knows what I'm talking about and they want my opinion. So all of this was like complete, so validating and confidence boosting and empowering that I came home now just like completely changing my. Now I was like, hi, I'm Tom and I'm a musician, you know, and I'm releasing music and I'm collaborating with people internationally and I'm making music videos and I'm live streaming and I'm doing live shows and all that just came, like I find all of that really scary, but it
Mm.
all came out of this kind of leap that I took, you know. Um,
Mm.
and yeah, that's something where, you know, if I'm feeling philosophical, that might have been the beginning of what we might talk about in a minute, which is kind of the business coming to an end, and why that was, and why that was difficult, and actually why kind of that paves the way for something new, you know?
I love that. I love it's almost like so I love Hunter's comment about the international community, you know, bonded together by a shared passion. It's almost as if you were sort of tuning into that. So you found your way in to expressing yourself through music, like through community and looking for, you know, the phrase like-minded people or people who share that passion, like, let's say,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
finding a way to be in that space took courage, which I do want to kind of move us on to in a moment. But first of all, I know for a fact that you actually now are using your music, the music you're writing and composing, in your teaching. So tell us briefly about that before we move on to the
yeah,
concept of
cool. So
courage.
this is
Yeah.
something that I was thinking earlier this year about kind of now I'm an independent consultant, so I'm completely working for myself and I all this like freedom about how I work. And, you know, as long as I can find people that pay me for it, I can do what I like effectively. And so then I was like, it's just such a great opportunity to try and bring some of my other passions and bring, you mentioned earlier about my sort of disparate interests and kind of different things going on. So I was like, this is the year where I can kind of start to pull some common threads between them and kind of bring those together, which is something I really want to do because actually something that we might have time to talk about is like wearing different hats in different rooms and being different people to different, audiences and stuff. And something I really have always admired in other people is when they just show up as themselves, no matter what. And you kind of, everyone they know kind of feels like they know the same them. And I think that's really, yeah, really interesting. And I've always aspired to that. So this is something I was thinking about a lot a few months ago, where I was like, how can I bring my music into my work, for example? And kind of a brainwave that I had was like, when I'm working alone and I want to focus, I might listen to like white noise. I listen to white noise a lot on my phone, or just kind of like ambient soundscape noise, or like lo-fi beats people listen to, things like that. Where it's sort of just like incidental background music. It just kind of keeps your brain like focused and things. There's various bits of research to kind of back up how that works and how that is effective at keeping you focused and even kind of making you more creative and things like that. Um, and a big part of what I do now is run workshops. So I get people into a room in person and try and help them be more creative and come up with ideas to solutions to problems, things like that. So then I thought, like, why is nobody doing this in a group setting like this? Why does nobody listen to sort of focus music or white noise or anything like that in a team setting? We only do that with headphones in a solo setting. So I had a workshop coming up. Luckily, it was a little friend of mine's business. So I emailed her and I was like, Claire, can you be a guinea pig for me? Will you let me kind of put this soundscape on in the workshop that we've got coming up? And she said, yeah, that sounds great. So I designed this 3-hour workshop. I knew the people that were going to be in the room and I knew the things that we were going to be working on. So I designed this soundscape to basically complement what was going to be happening in the room. So there's like 3 different scenes in the soundscape that sound slightly different. So there's one that's very much around feeling grounded and safe because there's a bit of vulnerability required in the workshop. People need to kind of put themselves forward and come up with ideas. So I wanted people to feel like that was a safe environment to do that. There's another scene that sounds more kind of open and airy, and that one is kind of encourages feelings of just sort of open-mindedness, lightness. It's no big deal. It's just about kind of having a good time and coming up with all these different ideas, and we're not. It's low stakes.
Mm.
Um, and so they were kind of designed to bring out certain feelings and to sort of guide the flow of the workshop, almost like a kind of guided meditation or like a sound bath or a gong bath or something like that. Sort of bringing all those like holistic medicine tools into a professional setting to really ground people and make people feel more relaxed and open. And I love making it. I absolutely love making a soundscape. I love an excuse to spend £200 on little Bluetooth speakers to bring them into the workshop. And the client loves the experience. So I got really good
Mm.
feedback afterwards. They said that one person said they genuinely felt more creative. Was just having loads of content reminded them of creativity, the art. It just put them in a different mindset rather than being in kind of a boardroom with post-it notes and stuff, which is a very different energy. Someone else said that near the end of the workshop, it really helped her to like keep motivated because if it was just silence, she would have been really kind of flagging and slumped in a chair and stuff. And someone else said that it really helped align them all as a team. So it just gave them this common ground or common experience that they were all having. So they felt like one thing that day, in that session, rather than like 6
Mm.
different people who were all coming with their own issues and preconceptions. They felt like one unit that they were working in this shared experience environment. And I love that feedback, and it's something that I'm really excited to take forward.
That is so cool. I tell you what, I would hire you. I would definitely hire you for the retreats that I do, 100%. And what I
Yeah,
love about that, Tom, is like you are showing up as an integrated creative person, practitioner, bringing your musical composition to that kind of corporate space. So you're challenging the kind of norms of what that is and should be, but also you're creating an integrative experience for the people in that space.
yeah,
I mean, it's just so cool. It's wonderful. I love it so much. It's great.
yeah,
You're very excited to see how that goes, that thread of your work and
yeah.
how things unfold from that.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
really interested in how it can develop just into this kind of, 'cause I don't know, but I found myself a lot of the time sort of on autopilot a bit, kind of floating through life. I don't feel super connected to my body or connected to my kind of senses or my environment, especially because like 89% of what I do is on a computer. So I'm kind of around some kind of screen. Um, and I think it is the times where I feel really connected to what I'm doing and really creative are when I feel physically connected to my environment and when I can, and when my senses are engaged and when I feel mindful of my body and how I'm feeling and how I'm occupying space and the space I'm in and things like that. And I think that I'm really excited about that because it kind of it's not found as my first instinct because I'm a musician, but I feel like we have many other senses and there's lots of different things to explore with that and ways that we can kind of ground ways that I can help people stay grounded and kind of in their bodies and in the moment in these kinds of
Mm,
workshops. When
mm.
honestly, I've done workshops before where people are like checking their emails and like they're kind of you can tell they're just sort of not present and they're like in here somewhere. You know, they're not kind of in the room. You know.
Yeah, amazing. I love that so much. Yeah, and it strikes me. I'm kind of moving now into the kind of whole courage aspect of this, and we've touched on that a couple of times. It strikes me that's a courageous thing to bring all of that into a room. It's an experiment, and it sounds like it worked wonderfully. To do that is quite courageous, hugely courageous, I would say. Showing up here on a live, to speak to me and have this conversation is courageous. And you mentioned a while ago, bringing one company to an end that you'd had, since you were in your 20s, and then you kind of made a decision to wrap that up and starting a new company. And I don't know, but I suspect that's the biggest, bravest decision you might have had to make so far in your life. Would that be fair to say?
Probably, yeah, I think so. So it was,
Yeah.
yeah. So the last couple of years have been hard with that business. You know, it's the tech sector at the moment is struggling. Like a lot of, especially small tech agencies are struggling. A lot of them are kind of being acquired by other businesses or just going under. Um, and I won't bore you with why that is, but we found ourselves last year in this situation where we were just like running out of cash. Basically, we had clients leaving and things like that. Um, and my co-founder and I had to make the decision about like, do we sort of take some drastic measures and cut a load of costs and unfortunately like have to make a load of redundant and stuff to kind of scale down to build back up again and kind of start afresh and weather the storm kind of thing, which would have definitely been possible. We've still had some loyal clients. We just didn't have enough to kind of fund our whole team. Um, but even before that, I've been having thoughts about like the longevity of it for me, and the toll it was having on me and my mental health and my kind of authentic self and like feeling like I was because I'm a people pleaser as well, and I'm definitely someone who like I recently discovered this term insecure overachiever, which is like so resonate with that, which is based to this idea that like I'm sort of academically really proficient and like I did well at school and I can like pick things up quickly and like learn things quickly, but that all comes with this underlying insecurity of like that's like the only reason I'm like worthy or like that like I need to be doing that in order to kind of justify a seat at the
Mm,
table or even justify like a space on the planet, um, which is something I'm feeling like I'm like thinking about. And even just knowing that that's a thing was like really helpful. But yeah, that kind of thing was really, I think by the end, the business was bringing out a lot of those feelings in me where I'm kind of just feeling like I need to be succeeding, whatever that is. And I need to be kind of doing bigger and more every year and kind of growing and things like that. Just this like hamster wheel situation, about race kind of thing. Um, and yeah, it was something that I was already thinking, like, you know what, we've put in a good run, like 10 years, and by this point, I was doing music stuff and I was doing my teaching and stuff, which I got into. As far as actually, I feel like I'm getting more value and I'm feeling more like me doing those things. And it's really scary to kind of like honor that feeling and listen to that voice because I can say this now with hindsight because now I did listen to that and I responded and I'm feeling good about it and it was the right thing. But you don't know that at the time. I don't know. I'm just kind of feeling at the time like I think so. I'm like feeling a lot of things all the time, and sometimes it's quite hard to like tease out like and know, oh yeah, this is the thing. So, I think at some point you just have to decide, like, and sort of that's what faith is, right? You just have to decide, like, you know what, I'm going to decide that this is the feeling to listen to, or like this is the thing to respond
mm.
to, and I'm going to have faith in myself that that's the right thing. And because I'm never going to know, no one's going to know actually you need to do this. This is absolutely the right thing. No one can see the future. but yeah, in that sense, it was courageous. You know, it was something that was really scary, and um, like ending that business in the first place. You know, let alone setting up a new business afterwards. But honestly, I feel like the setting up of a new business afterwards, like the stakes felt, you know, I don't know if they felt lower, but I feel like it was very different because I was doing something that was just me rather than trying to build out something sort of outside of me and build a team and stuff. But I think the courage there came in a different way, which sort of because the courage with Big Echo and the new business is more about courage to show my authentic self, to show who I am, and to bring that into my work and sort of put it out there to the world of like, I like this and I think you should like it and I think it's cool and please pay me for it. You know, and that was like quite different to the other kind of courage before. Whereas the courage before was like, you know, all the kind of the thing before was like trying to feed everyone and make sure everyone had their bills paid and payable salaries and like it's almost like running a business for the business of it, you know, and like trying to create this team and things like that. Whereas now it's like creating a business as a container for all the things that I love and I'm passionate about, you know. And so the theatre there comes more in the vulnerability of it, and which I hadn't really experienced in the previous business because I didn't actually feel that vulnerable in the previous experience. I just felt a lot of pressure, you know. I just felt like yeah, pressure to succeed.
Yeah, I love that, the distinctions between those different kinds of fear, like the fear of like being appearing successful, the fear of like making enough money or,
Mm.
having supporting the team or whatever it is, those kind of external markers of success. Whereas actually what's coming across really clearly in what you say is like being more me was the phrase that you use, that listening to that intuitive wisdom about what your authentic self needs. And I love that so much. It's like that the faith that you talk about, I think, is really linked to trusting that the real self, our essential self, can really come to the fore if we just let it. And we can,
Mm.
we never really lose the fear, but the fear of vulnerability is the biggest thing that holds us back, I think.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I guess I just want to kind of riff here a little bit on kind of what you think is essenced in this conversation and what that means to you. And I mean, you've spoken a little bit about that journey to get there, but I'd love to kind of just have your take on what that is for you and how that shows up now in your life and business.
Yeah, that's such a great word for it. I guess for me, like it's what's left after I like take off all the masks and like stop performing kind of thing, like and stop the sort of like doing things in service of others. You know, it's kind of and it's something I feel closest to my essence when I'm like when I get the opportunity to be creative, you know, when I feel relaxed and I feel like there's no pressure to sort of yeah, there's no external pressure, you know. If I think to the time where I felt most connected to that, it would have been when I was young, when I was sort of between the ages of like 8, 9 and like 13, 14 or something, where I'm just sort of like, I'm extremely lucky that I came from a very supportive and safe and stable household, you know, and I never wanted for anything. And my parents both really encouraged my creativity and encouraged me to like explore myself and spend time with my hobbies and things like that, which was really amazing. Um, and yeah, between those ages, I was kind of like writing on stories and making music and making crafts and drawing and like just doing all kinds of stuff because like I hadn't been sort of taught yet by the world that like that's not, you know, you need to
Mm,
like pack money and get a real job or whatever. I hadn't really internalized that yet. And I think a lot of people relate to that when they're kids, you know, which is something we talk about a lot in my workshops. It's like, everyone's creative when they're little, like, because they don't know that they're like sort of not a creative person. That seems really silly to like tell a child, you know,
mm,
who's just like happy to draw and make stuff. But I think definitely those signs are where I felt closest to that, and it's just I don't know if I'm smart enough to like define what essence is, but it's definitely something that I feel it when it's like that's really interesting as well. That's going to be like a total tangent and like mess up our really great flow of what we're talking about. But I've also recently been seeing a personal trainer for
mm,
the last like 10 weeks, which I've never done before, and I'm absolutely loving it. And the reason I thought about it is because I was actually part of your, Rachel, 3 words for this year, workshop this year. And one of
Mm,
my words was space. And space is like, yeah, anyway, so I'm kind of thinking a lot about like how I inhabit space and my physical body and things like that, and feeling more present in my body and more kind of confident in my body and stuff like that. Um, and with the whole kind of essence piece, it's like I also feel it when I'm sometimes feel it when I'm like in the gym, and I feel so connected to like the world. I'm connected to my body and my senses, and I just feel like my vision is really clear, and I'm like I have this like almost spiritual sense of like I'm just like here right now. I'm like experiencing everything, and it's like I'm present, and there's I'm not in my head. I'm almost like not thinking about anything, which is extremely rare for me. Um, so yeah, it's that. It's just that feeling of like when everything else is gone, and kind of the external pressures are gone, the overthinking is gone, the kind
mm,
of even just the sort of like fatigue or like feeling drained or whatever is gone, when you're just kind of left with yourself in a vacuum, that's like scary. That can be really scary. You know, it can be quite confronting. But I think over the last few years, I've done a lot through like therapy and things like that to learn more about that essence of me and like who I am underneath all of that. And so when I now am in a position where I'm um, able to spend time with that part of me, it's a nice experience now, you know, and it's something where I'm actually like I'm able to welcome that part of me in and just kind of sit with it, you know.
I love that. Welcome that part of me in. Yeah, that feels so important. And you know, I don't think. Yeah, I think your definition of essence is wonderful. Like you know, there is no. One of the things about having these conversations so often is like everyone has a different kind of definition. But what comes up is this idea of like, the way you put it, like the masks are taken off. We're not going into overthinking or perfectionism or all of the things that get in the way, that we've like learned to layer on top of each other as we grow older, that we don't have as children. You know, it's like the messages that we inherit, you know, and then we integrate and we absorb, and then we kind of become those limiting beliefs or those stories or whatever. So I think I love that. And I love that you experienced essence in the gym as well. It's just so
Yeah,
brilliant.
who knew?
Again, creativity, you know, because it's actually it's a kind of mode of expression, I think, in a way. It's like putting
Yeah,
your body in space and expressing yourself in that very basic kind of way. I love it as an
yeah,
embodied
almost like
practice.
primal way, you know. Yeah,
Totally, totally, yeah. So I love that definition of essence, and for me, that's a big thing that I notice as well in myself and in others that I work with. Like this idea of we operate from survival mechanisms because they've kept us safe and they've kept us, you know, successful, and often we don't know we're in that script. And as soon as we are able to like recognize it and to notice and maybe to like respect or honor the place that those stories or those personas or whatever you want to call them have had, you know, for us, how they've kind of kept us going and, you know, allowed us to thrive to some extent. The more we create space and we create that integration that we've been talking about as well and touching on here. Yeah, so good. Such a great definition of essence, I think. Um, so we've got more people joining, and welcome everyone. We're here with Tom Parson, who's talking about his role as a tech entrepreneur and innovative consultant, innovation consultant, and a musician as well. I'd love to know, Tom, about a bit more about your business, the new business, which has just got the coolest title ever of Big
thanks.
Echo, which is just it just brings together so much of what you do. So tell us about Big Echo and what you're aspiring to and wanting to kind of do in that.
Yeah, great. So, as I touched on, the previous business was all about like tech and building tech for people. So clients would come to us and they would say like, "Oh, we need this thing, we need a platform, or we need an app, or we need a digital product or something." And they would kind of give us a brief, and we would kind of challenge that a little bit and just be like, "Well, okay, I think you've said you need this, but actually maybe you need this and things like that." But we were definitely coming in at the point where they'd already made the decision about what they wanted, and they were just like, "No, no, no, just give us a quote, and we'll go ahead with it." Whatever. Um, and what I found is that a lot of the time there is this culture with tech and creativity actually, where businesses will hire in external support for that sort of stuff. They'll hire in agencies. So like this kind of madman idea of like we'll get the creatives in and they'll come and give us a campaign and they'll pitch us this idea and we can go with that because we're not really creative, so we'll get other people to come in and do that. Um, but what I started to realize, like, which it dawned on me over the course of the business, is that people are like giving away so much of their power with that, because people are creative, and through the process of working with these clients very closely on these projects, I really got to understand, like, you guys are creative, like, and you know the problem way better than we do because you live it and breathe it every day, and you know your customers way better than we do. You know the people that are going to be using these products and stuff better than us. And actually, if you were just empowered to believe that you could come up with these solutions and that you could be more sort of, keep saying the word authentic, but like that you could come up with ideas that are more aligned with what you guys do and your values and what you believe in as a group of people. Um, that's going to have such a greater chance of success than anything that someone else could kind of come in and fix for you, and you
Mm.
see that on a personal, individual level when people like, I also went on this like weight loss journey a few years ago, and that only worked for me because it was a particular program that I embodied and I kind of learned how to eat healthily and things like that. It wasn't some like external, like eat this and then eat this and then eat this and you'll lose weight. Um, we saw the effects of that kind of the negative effects of that as the agency, because we would see clients invest all this money in a tech product or an app or something, and then it would launch to a big fanfare. And then, whether it's like shareholders or senior stakeholders or the people on the ground at the coalface using it every day in the business, or even the customers, they would kind of see that and be like, what's that? That's not really what we asked for, or like what that doesn't really solve the problem if you actually understood the problem. Because often the people commissioning these things internally aren't really the people experiencing the problem that they're trying to solve. It's like, oh, we'll just make this solution without actually speaking to the people that are kind of experiencing the issue or whatever. Um, so we found that often clients it would be a bit of a lukewarm reception, at the end of these projects. And then we'd spend a lot of time refining and building on it and things like that, and a lot of the client's money, kind of getting it to a place where really we kind of knew this 18 months ago if we'd have just asked everyone and involved everyone in the process. So now what I want to do with Big Echo is take some steps back in the process and help people to basically deliver tech products like that. Whether that's like a new internal platform or like a new customer facing portal or a new website or something, to help people build platforms like that are more authentic and more aligned with what their customers want and what their staff want and just how they operate.
Mm.
And I'm doing that through like a co-creation philosophy, right? Because I really believe the kind of the first thing is I really believe everyone can be creative, and I feel like people don't need to just, as soon as you have a problem, you don't need to like hire in external support to solve it, um, especially support that can be very expensive. Um, and so with Big Echo, there's kind of three components to it. So the first one is workshops and co-creation, like ideation workshops, to basically get people back into this creative place, to empower people to really believe that they can solve their own problems and come up with their own solutions. Um, and the second one is, because I have a background in tech, I am able to provide this rapid like tech prototyping service, which is actually facilitated through the use of AI prototyping tools. And I have lots of, we're not going to have time for this, but I have lots of thoughts on like AI and how AI can actually make us more creative and actually get us closer to our essence by kind of getting rid of all the stuff that obscures our essence and just like letting AI do that. Anyway, so using AI to like rapidly prototype these tech tools in a matter of like 10 minutes, something that would have taken like 2 months previously. It's
Mm.
incredible. Put those in front of people. So if we're building something new for customers, we'll rapidly create this prototype and put it in front of them and ask them about it. Is this what you had in mind? Does this solve the problem? If not, why not? And how could we improve it? Something that previously would have taken months to realize that, and lots of wasted money and effort, and then putting it in front of someone like, isn't this great? And they're like, no, not really. It's not really what I meant. Whereas people are learning that as quickly as possible is super important. And then the whole like change management piece. So actually, kind of another obstacle we would have and our clients would have is that they build these things, launch them, and then the staff just wouldn't adopt them. The team wouldn't be bought into it. They would just think it's being done to them and not with them. And there's this kind of cultural sort of fatigue, like change fatigue, where they're just like,
Mm.
well, we only just changed this last year, and now we're having to learn
Mhm.
something else, and it's just going to be the same as last year. It's not going to work. So the last kind of pillar is this change management, and kind of that's so much easier if you've got people involved from the outset and you've actually consulted them and said, like, we know what the problem, well, you've told us what the problem is. Can you help us come up with a solution? And then that user adoption and that change is actually a lot more, people embrace that a lot more at the end. So yeah, it's a very long-winded way of saying I help businesses to like de-risk tech innovation basically and make sure it's a success.
Fantastic. You know, what I hear there is empowerment of other people, authenticity. So you being authentic, you know, in your business and allowing other people to find their own authenticity. And I hear possibility as well. So all
Yeah,
of those things I think are really crucial to creativity, whatever its manifestation or form. And that's what I hear in what you've created in Big Echo. And I suspect you wouldn't have been able to create it, you know, unless you'd been through your own journey of listening to yourself deeply, working out who you are, working out what's important, stepping up in that vulnerability and courage and creating this new thing. So, yeah, so excited about this evolution of your journey, Tom. It's brilliant to hear. And so thank you for inspiring all of us with your story and, you know, talking about your multimodal creativity and also the ways in which courage has really, yeah, you've kind of stepped up and found the courage to kind of be who you really are. I think it's really inspiring. Um, Thank you to everybody for listening and witnessing and your comments. Yeah, thank you for sharing your positive podcast. Thanks. Yeah, interesting interview. I agree. It's been a really wonderful, interesting conversation. There will be show notes that we'll produce, but Tom, I just want to finally ask you, like, where can people find you? Where's the best place to find you if we want to know more about your work?
right. Best place is either on LinkedIn, where I'm Tom Parson, um, obviously, or Instagram, where I'm also Tom Parson, just with two underscores at the end. But yeah, working on a website, but that's the best place for now.
Great. And I'll put the links in that as well. And I should say that Tom's written a really wonderful blog post as well on my own site. So I'll put a link
Yeah.
in the show notes for that as well. So people can read in your own words, your story and what's been true for you in your yeah, your creative journey so far. Thank you to everyone here. It's so great to be in the company of all of you and really dig into what creativity is and why courage is important. And thanks most of all to Tom for showing up on what is a really hot and sultry day. And I think we both deserve to go now and have a long cold drink and cool
Absolutely.
down a little bit. But thanks so much, Tom. And yeah, keep in touch. Take care.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, no worries. Bye, everyone.